I've been a VTuber fan and a 3D printing nerd for a while now, and I figured why not marry the two by modeling and printing my own 3D printed VTuber props. What you see here is just a small collection of what I've made recently. I have some more models coming down the pipeline, so subscribe for more. So jumping into Onshape here, I wanted to show off the model. I don't have a video of this processing, like as I was making it, because the original, which hopefully I'll be showing some footage of it on screen right now, but the original one was really poor. I didn't like any aspect of it besides its dimensions. And so I decided to come in and completely redo it from scratch. The only thing that's the same between this and the version 1 is that the the eyes and the mouth, that sketch I copied onto this one. So you can actually see the skeleton of that decision here. So here is the final design of the Gura hair tie. This is the main body that you're looking at here. So this one, the way that I did it was very simple. I made a diamond. Again, I used these measurements just kind of by eyeballing things. This one I didn't draw a sketch for, and I decided not to fillet the corners yet because I wanted to do that with the final piece once it was done. After that, I then just made a line of I put 7.2 because, again, this is all based off of the one that I previously made that I decided not to go with because it was very ugly.
I beg your pardon?
And I lofted the two, which you can see here. Then what I did was I took the sketch that I made for the previous version, where I had all of the eyes, the mouth, all of that, and I just extruded them down into that pyramid shape that I had made. And then all of the edges that came down, you can see here, these were very sharp. I gave these all a fillet of 1.8 millimeters. Again, an arbitrary number that I just kind of typed in and looked visually at what looked the best. And that is the reason why I didn't end up filleting these corners in the sketch. And instead I went with filleting them once I had extruded out the final shape, because then that fillet would carry across the whole shape instead of just that sketch. If I had done it in the sketch, it would have kind of messed up the loft, and that's why I did that. That's the first part. Then if you've printed this is a two-part model. So I'm gonna quickly shift over and view the second part. First, I made just like a box. Again, this is kind of just a very arbitrary number that I put on it. What I'll do, and you might see this if I stream in the future, I'll just do whole numbers and work my way down from there if I don't like the numbers that I chose. Because Onshape, the program I use, is a parametric modeler. Everything comes after each other like a list. Whatever you change at the beginning or the top of the list will change everything that is dependent on that choice. So I could easily go in here and change those 8.5s to something else. Then I just extruded that up just a little bit to give it some space to nest into the hairpiece. You can see here it has a little bit more play, so you can push it into there. I wanted this circle to nest as much as it could into the square here so that it gave the 3D print as much as possible to work off of. And so I think that the final design came out really well in that regard. The extrude that I did was something called symmetric, which means that it will go both ways in the same amount. So this is 7 millimeters total, but it will put it directly in the center as of where you chose to extrude it, the face. What I did find out is this model right here is way, way, way too small.
Ooh, yikes. That's pretty tiny.
So I had to go back to the drawing board and resize this. Here is Amelia Watson's time travel clock. This one was a lot of fun to design. It took the most iterations out of all of the designs that I'm going to show off in this video. The reason for that is I originally started by using another user's model, and I was just going to show it off. I wasn't going to do like a full video on it. However, as I got closer to finishing it up, I noticed that there was so much that I had to change in the model that I might as well just make it myself from scratch with completely new numbers. I'd like to take you through the design process for how I made it. So the first thing was just kind of sketching out the shape based on some references that I had taken from a trading card that Ame has, and then also just her model that she uses while she's streaming. I wanted to give a lot of extra space here up at the top for the chain that I had bought. I wanted the gold chain to be able to wrap around it a couple of times, and I also wanted it to be really secure because I was going to be, you know, the whole clock hangs from this, so I didn't want this point to be a weak point. The fillets and this space right here that I took out are all based off of measurements I took using the clock mechanism that I got from Michaels with a caliper. Because this is such a shallow space, it just doesn't make sense to use tree supports in this case, and so if I had rounded it, I think it would have kind of messed with that. And also, you're not going to see this, so it doesn't need to have any extra flourishes. This is going to be on your chest as you wear it, or if you display it on the wall like I have. The final thing that I wanted to add is this little groove for the second piece, which is the mustache piece. This isn't too complicated in terms of its actual function. It's literally just a male and female peg and hole, but it did take a couple of iterations to get exactly right. And the actual drawing of the mustache was kind of fun, which you can see on this sketch right here. It's just all curves, no straight lines on this whole piece, which was a little difficult for me at the time because I'd never done, this is my first like quote-unquote organic shape that I had ever done. In the first try, the epoxy seeped into the cardstock and failed. To try and fix it, I decided to laminate the cardstock to give it a resistance to the epoxy. This had the consequence of making the clock face float in the epoxy. This is when I decided to just go with my own model with my own dimensions, but of course I screwed up the dimensions myself and it was too thin and too small for the clock face.
What do you mean it's too small? No! What do you mean? Why?
Taking all this into account, I laminated another sheet, printed a new model that was a lot thicker,
Based.
and glued down the final clock face before measuring, mixing, and pouring of the final epoxy. I finished up by knocking some of the bubbles out with a butane torch, but I had to be careful not to stay in one spot for too long or else I would melt the plastic or push the epoxy out of where it needed to be. Once the epoxy cured, I attached the clock mechanism and the chain, and it was ready for demonstration.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but you see this clock right here? This is a magical clock. Yes, not magical. It's sci-fi, a sci-fi clock. And this turns the thingy and it goes, and I set the time and I go. That's just an example of how the time machine works. Yeah.
What I did was I had an idea in my head for how big I wanted the cube itself to be, and then I took each of these parts and I subtracted them away from that total length. It ended up being, I believe, 70 millimeters. This one worked out pretty well. The only problem is it was printed way too big. I ended up going back and making a completely new cube from the ground up using that first one as the example. So the first one, the easiest piece, is piece 1. So this piece right here is the vertical and the horizontal piece. So in the final assembly, you can see it's this piece and this piece. They actually are the exact same piece. You only have to print one file just twice rather than 2 different files for these faces. The way that I made all of these parts is through the exact same method, where I just took a generic rectangle and extruded it up. The only thing is then I could go and add a sketch on the side that would then take out the space from that cube or that rectangular prism, so that then I could add in that space that you're seeing here. The second part, again, the easier part, another easy part to make. This one was just a cube with a little bit taken out of it. This piece is on this part in the model, you can see down here. This one, like I said before, I just took a square, extruded it out, and took a little bit off of it. So this one started like all of the others, where I had a sketch for a rectangle and I drew that out, but in the way that I had to go about it to cut out the part for the battery was a little bit different. So I added a new sketch where I took off a little bit of the front face. Once I had extruded that down, then I could draw on this face that was a cut rectangle, or like a trapezoid, and I could input those numbers that we have from earlier, where the grooves are 2.5, and I could extrude that down. Now the way I made this face is by coming onto the side here and just making that exact same shape that we did before, rectangle extruded backwards. However, the big difference here is that on the face where the LEDs are going to be put in, I added an extra lip of about 5.5 millimeters. This allows for the LEDs and the battery to not slide out of the cube. So this one was a little bit more complicated in the design that it needed, but it again wasn't too difficult to model. The final part of the gold outlay is this little piece that has the hook on it so that you can wear it. And this one goes on top here in the model. You can see it right here. Again, square, extrude it up, and then in order to make the face, I cut it in half. That's what you see here. And then I extrude it out to get it so that then it only had half of the rectangle. Then in order to get this little bit there, I extruded this little line here and then cut the rest of the shape out, so that then I had a shape that looked like this. This part up here, I extruded up a square, just like all the other cases, and then I drew a face onto this one, just a circle, like this. And when I cut it out, it rounded this edge up here, and it took out this right here. That is with a fillet. And it ended up that the fillet could catch on both of these ends, so it could end up looking really, really nice. And I'm overall very proud of how this turned out. So the way that I made this was I just took a regular square like we talked about before. But this one I actually knew all of the dimensions because I had made all of the gold pieces beforehand. So I could actually make this really, really easily. I knew that it was going to go 32.5 plus 2 to get that number that I needed to get that perfect angle. I just made a sketch here, 2.5, extruded it backwards just a little bit, and then what I could do is I could take this face right here, which you can see on this one right here, and I already knew the dimensions that it would be. I wanted the wall to be 2.5 millimeters thick, and so I could just extrude that using that symmetric extrusion like I talked about for the Gura hair tie.
And this is my cube. そしてね、キューブがありますと。This cube has a special power. Would you like to see it? このキューブね、なんとスペシャルなパワーがあるんです。それをお見せしようと思います。ただ
ー Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and if you have any ideas for future models that I could make, leave a comment down below. Thank you very much.